These faces are the reason I came to southern Sudan. These eyes are windows into souls that tell a story difficult to put into words.
Hospital with the heavy sticker on his ribs.
Why was he beaten?
He lost some teeth.
Had to work even when he was sick and not able to have treatment.
Yeah.
This is the kind of horror the people of southern Sudan endured for 20-some years as the government in Khartoum and the Sudan People's Liberation Army fought a bloody civil war, some call it genocide, for more than 2 decades as the Janjaweed raided villages, slaughtered families, and took tens of thousands of civilians into slavery. A comprehensive peace agreement ended the war in southern Sudan, but the nightmare for those taken as slaves to the north continues today, as the threat of a war reigniting hangs in the air.
Everything is going very slow in implementation of the CP and something like that. I say it is a work of politicians to do this, to encourage peaceful. We need peaceful. We don't want war, but peaceful processes.
It's hard to comprehend that slavery exists today, so I traveled to southern Sudan with Christian Solidarity International, or CSI, a small group of courageous individuals I now call 21st century abolitionists.
Since 1995, we first encountered the reality of the slave raids in a powerful way. We went to the village of Nyamlel that had just been destroyed some weeks before we arrived. The NGOs that were there had moved out. The Red Cross failed to go in to help because the government of Sudan said no. So the international community allowed itself to be dictated to by the government of Sudan that was responsible for the slave raiding. We went in anyway. We didn't pay any attention to the government's ban. We went in and were the first to arrive weeks after the slave raid and couldn't believe what we saw. Because the rest of the world was not dealing with this issue of slavery, which is a crime against humanity according to international law, we felt that we should come back again to do further investigation. And after a few visits to the area, that there was actually a local grassroots mechanism for getting enslaved women and children back. There's a basic understanding that the Dinka chiefs from this area have with some of their Muslim Arab neighbors in the north, who will go around to cattle camps and villages in the north and identify women and children and bring them back. CSI's main role in this is to support the peace committees.
The Arab Dinka Peace Committees. CSI makes cattle vaccines available as a goodwill gesture to encourage the Arabs to release slaves.
Their cattle are more valuable than slaves.
Imagine holding someone's life in your hands. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. Holding 400 lives in my hand. In this box is Navidium, cattle vaccine that will be used to free 400 slaves. Over the years that this Harriet Tubman-like underground tunnel has evolved, many freed slaves become interpreters and abolitionists themselves. I also found that often loved ones are reunited with family members.
He was taken to slavery a long time ago, and they have 3 days working.
Believe me when I say the sun was nearly intolerable, so it was amazing to see rows of men and boys sitting, waiting for 5 days for us. They'd walked, escorted by members of the Arab Dinka Peace Committee, for miles in the blistering heat from the northern part of Sudan. The shade from this huge mahogany tree kept them from baking in the sun.
The slaves that have come back today, the liberated slaves, were enslaved before 2005, and the peace agreement has done nothing to free them. The international community has not seized the opportunity created by the peace agreement to bring about the release of all of those women and children who are enslaved, and all of the available evidence points to tens of thousands of women and children being still enslaved in the north, especially in Darfur.
This little boy, Mahmed, was one of the first to tell us his story.
If he doesn't know his age, ask him how many rainy seasons he was gone from home.
Imagine not knowing your own age, like this little boy. But he thinks he remembers 9 rainy seasons, so he's about 8 to 9 years old, obviously born into slavery.
He was taken from mother in Merem.
He was taken from his mother in Merem
In Merem, yes.
and separated.
And separated from her.
Was anyone kind to him or good to him besides his mother?
Ai nâng ngã bắp kỹ.
It's a world lacking kindness these men and boys just escaped. Each heart-wrenching story is documented, and photos are taken to ensure that the same people are not going back into slavery over and over. And most importantly, it serves as a record that these souls do exist, even if they are invisible to the rest of the world.
Robbed of their identity, robbed of their childhood, robbed of their life, robbed of their parents, robbed of their country.
Every month, sometimes twice a month, even during the rainy season, these abolitionists, Dr. John Eibner, an expatriate, and Gunnar Valbeck, a German, both living in Switzerland, and Pastor Heidi McGinnis from the U.S., come to Sudan to free slaves.
More than 100 people have been freed today. These men and boys will be processed with their names, their ages, and soon be given the tools that they need to start a new life, a free life.
Instead of playing and going to school, this little boy has never had a childhood.
This boy has got his master who have enslaved him. So when the boy is sick, is ill, for instance, the master is always posing him to go, whether he's very sick or not, to go and look after the goats.
So the master tells him to go look after the goats even if he's sick?
When the boy is saying, today I'm very ill and I wish to go to hospital for treatment, the master does not agree. He's saying that by force or by all means, you can go and look after the goats.
You go look after the goats?
Yes, by force. Yeah, whether the boy is very sick or not.
They've been beaten, burned, raped. Each story clings to me like a heavy cloak of sadness and despair. But as the sweltering hot day wears on, something special begins to happen.
So nice to see the smiles come back.
Dominic, what I want to do is to see who the other elders are.
Finally, the last steps in the long journey home. Everything that was once taken away from them, family, land, love, is slowly returned.
We will not rest until we bring all the Dinka people.
Part of the slave retrieval is giving them back their dignity and hope.
Tell him that he's a very handsome Dinka man, and that it is the love of God who has brought him back through the prayers and the good deeds of people, his own people, Dinka people, and Christians from America and Switzerland.
Does he know that he's free now and can have a future of freedom? And if so, how does that feel?
Not having been allowed to own anything, including their feelings, there are no words to describe this moment. And these sacks of hope are filled with seeds and basic farming tools. Then at last, a community embraces the former slaves and their new lives begin.
We are campaigning against slavery. We believe that slavery is indeed a crime against humanity, and believe that that requires action. It requires action on the part of government. It requires action on the part of NGOs. It requires action on the part of just ordinary citizens. What is the point of having crimes against humanity on international law books if nobody does anything about it?
120-degree heat. No water, no electricity or cell phones, no roads or hotels. Camping in the desert for 2 weeks at a time. I wondered what drives these abolitionists to endure these extreme conditions.
Well, what really motivates me to carry on is when I encounter, say, the slaves that have come back today, encounter their families, their community, and know how much this means to them, combined with the fact that nobody else is doing it. And the minute that the international community, that the United Nations or other organizations really put their back into it and treat this crime against humanity as it ought to be treated, and do it more efficiently and better than we do it, I'll let them get on with the job. I hope they don't, but my feeling is that they will continue to turn their back on the slaves of Sudan because they have no value. In our market economy, these people don't count. We shouldn't wait for the government or wait for the UN. That's a cop-out and an excuse. There are things that we can do now, and we're going to get on with the job, freeing the 1, 2, 50, the 100 that one sees here today, and we'll come back again and again as long as there are resources to do it.
The abolitionists and the courage of the slaves helped me to believe in the power of a few.